can you truly hate without attributing that hate from your religion's God? Ebon Kim.
Then also another thing children do is calling each other names. And they get very, very het up because somebody says to Johnny, "You're a sissy." And you call me a sissy, and that's just terrible. I am not a sissy. Or I am not, if he's learned to identify himself as a boy and somebody says he's a girl, there's a real fight about that because they are terribly particular that the right word should apply to the right thing, and I am not what you tell me I'm, because the whole education of a child is really telling him who he is. All the teachers, all the adults, all the other children are constantly telling each other who they are. And alas, we believe it. And so you come not to know who you are at all. You come to believe that you're what everybody tells you are. And so this gets very funny indeed, because we are all at once telling each other that we are unique. You see, you're different from me, and you're the only thing like you in the world. But at the same time, we're saying to each other, but you ought to be just like me. Because after all, if you're not really like me, you're so far out, you're not human. And so the more we tell each other that we are like each other, the less point there is in talking to each other. Because after all, if you're just the same as I am, we've got nothing to talk about. I can't learn anything from you because you're just like me. Then on the other hand, if you really are different from me, then I can find out something I never knew before. But I told you who you were in the first place, and you told me who I was. So we're making each other up. So long as, in that is to say, as we live in that domain of words and defining who and what we are. Now, look at this whole thing. This is the situation. Maya, then, is to a very large extent a verbal creation. You notice cats and dogs, they don't have a religion, as far as anyone can see. They don't go to church, they don't have big philosophical problems, and we say they're, for that reason, uncivilized. But they're not really uncivilized. They have other things they do, which are just as complicated. But they don't have this hang-up with words. Words are magic, you see. In the beginning was the Word. By the word of the Lord were the heavens made, and all the hosts of them by the breath of his mouth, according to the Bible. And that means that not that the real world that you are looking at now, this wasn't created by words. But the world of separate things, separate people, separate events, that was created by words. Now I hope this is, I've said this to some of you before because you've been to earlier seminars, but this is absolutely fundamental for understanding what the Buddhist Mahayana doctrine of emptiness is. Shunyata. You see, in Sanskrit, shunya means void, and the suffix ta means ness, so voidness. And all the world is called sunyata, and that word doesn't mean that really there isn't anything, but it means there isn't anything. It is saying that the world does not consist of distinct things or distinct events. Things are nouns and events are verbs. And if you pick up any available, unhandleable piece of nature, the idea that this is a thing is just an idea. Because you see, this that I am touching is not an idea. And it's not a thing, because you can ask immediately, well, how many things is it? Well, that depends on how you divide it. You can say, well, it has a top and a bottom. That makes 2. Then there's cardboard covered with paper, and that makes 4. But then what about all the letters printed on it? They are also things, aren't they? What about the constituent molecules, the distinct electrons that prove themselves to be there upon physical analysis? How many things is it? It's as many things as you can figure. Because you see, a thing is a unit of thought. A thing is a think. In English, thing and think are alike. In German, ding and denken. In Latin, res means thing and reor means to think. To reify, we use even in English, means to thingify. When you say, for example, the lightning flashed. Now, actually, the flash is the same as the lightning. So you reify a thing called lightning, which does something called flashing. And so you create a ghost. And one of the great Chinese masters, Lin Ji, lived in the Tang Dynasty about 800 AD, said that his work as a Buddhist teacher was to beat the ghosts out of you, to exorcise you, to, in other words, disenchant. And so one comes to understand that there are in nature no things and no events. So this is the Sunyata doctrine. Things and events have only a verbal reality. And that is a thing that is as powerful for a person who's an intellectual as for a person who's not an intellectual. It isn't just that this is a problem from which the brainy people suffer. All human beings suffer from it, because even the less brainy people are just as subject to verbal enchantment and to spellbinding and the magic of words as the very intellectual people.
Good afternoon, everyone. My son is taking a nap, otherwise I would have started an hour earlier. But anyways, let's just get this thing moving. Yesterday I was kind of revealing one of the lead content creators of the Flat Earth, Flat Earth, I guess, was asking for money and got like the money he asked for. And just interesting things about when that happens. And one of the people I was looking at that had a pretty good article on it was Aria Percier, and she has a lot of other things on things. But as I look more, I mean, she links to Controlled Opposition, there's stuff on WikiLeaks and a whole bunch of others, and then transgender transvestigation. I was going, it's time for me to do transvestigation. One of the things I noticed is that no one who does content on transvestigation or the trans agenda is transgender. So maybe I'm the first transgender doing a transvestigation, an actual transvestigation on the trans agenda. Another thing is a lot of the people who make a lot of content on the transgender agenda, and sometimes that's kind of all that they go for, and maybe they'll just kind of, right, they'll have different types of things that they're going. It's kind of all over the place, right? And, you know, you'll have people who do transvestigation think the earth isn't flat, or 9/11 happened the way it did, or whatever. So there's just a lot of different things just kind of folding you back into a control system. And also, you never know their real names. You also never see their face. You know nothing of them. So take what they have to say with the you know, grain of sand, grain of salt, whatever it is. You don't know anything about them. It's just a black box telling you something. But you should always look into it. The only exception that I probably saw is Lift the Veil, of course. He did something on Telling the Truth is transphobic. Not sure if I will ever get a chance to talk to him, but he does seem to have ability to talk to a lot of people, which I would also consider as part of the controlled opposition. David Icke, I guess, could be one of them. Greg Carwood, I already told you about Greg Carwood with the whole thing about Tracy Twyman way back in the past. I most likely don't trust him. Anyways, those are just another types of signs where you could kind of see where the controlled opposition fits in. You don't know their names, you don't know what they look like, otherwise, and you can't really contact them to have a conversation. So that just kind of is another indicator of controlled opposition, but it's in the new form. It's interesting. It's kind of like QAnon and a whole bunch of stuff where in that line. So one of the things before I move on, I saw somewhere where like the leader of the Blue rally in Pittsburgh switched from chanting All Lives Matter to Kill Transgenders. I want to play that. I did a tweet about it. So he switched to chanting "kill faggots" too. Well, my tweet was, I just find it interesting that these, if they're leaders or whatever it is, the one with the bullhorns, the one screaming the loudest, especially when they tell other people to kill other people, they're never the ones doing it themselves. Because the irony is, if that person killed someone for being transgender or gay, he'd end up in prison for the rest of his new gay life. When you're in prison, you're only in prison with, especially if you're in big federal penitentiary or whatever, you're in prison with a whole bunch of other people of the same sex. And, things go on in there. Don't drop the soap. That was the big joke back in the 80s and 90s and stuff. So why listen to someone who tells you what to do but doesn't do it themselves, right? It's the same thing with really not caring what other people think, especially when those people who don't care about you, they don't know you to care about you, right? The ones that care about you will probably support you in not caring what other people who don't care about you think. So the more you think about it, it's really nothing to worry about. Most likely you're never going to find someone who's going to want to have sex with you if you're something, right? If someone who's very transphobic or homophobic, they're not going to have sex with the same gender or a transgender. So what does it matter to them? Are they gonna, maybe they'll find out, maybe you're friends, you become friends somehow, but that's it, just something platonic. And say if you're already someone who's LGBTQ plus and married, you're not gonna have sex with them. And if they're religious and they don't like it because of that, then but they want to have sex with you, that's just weird. And they're trying to have sex with you while you're married. So it just kind of, why do they care so much? And that gets to my quote that I had, the quote of the day. And the quote is, can you truly hate someone, anyone? Just say this person hates transgenders and gay people, but does he hate them without attributing that hate from his religion's God? So maybe all these people are religious in one type of religion, and that religion has a doctrine or some dogma, or has a God state, or they're translating whatever it is being said, that God hates transgenders, so kill transgenders. And but can that person actually hate transgenders without attributing it to that religion's God? And I started to think of a thing, that's a thing. So I'm thinking, it's like, well, I don't think so. I mean, it's like, usually you don't hate something unless you have an experience with that something, right? So, I mean, maybe that person who hates gays had a friend that was gay, that turned out to be gay, and he didn't like the way that his friend talked, I guess. I don't know why he was friends with him in the first place, whatever. Or maybe he didn't like the way he dressed, or therefore he doesn't like the way gays dress. But then all gays dress differently, so we shouldn't be able to hate all gays. So it really doesn't make sense in many ways, to just individually hate just kind of a group thing. And so I was looking at the trans agenda. I've looked into it in the past, conspiracy theories, and how a bunch of individuals, especially celebrities, rich people, politicians, could be transgender, and people wouldn't know, I guess. That's the thing. For example, the idea that Michelle Obama is transgender, and I think she is transgender based on some of the videos, and especially the parts where Barack Obama keeps calling her, was it Mike or Eric or something? Oh, I think it was Mike, because Michelle Mike. Anyways, I just thought it's just a little peculiar. But as far as looks, I think it's too difficult to tell. You can look at a whole bunch of pictures, especially when people transition young, where you can't really tell the difference that they transitioned at all. I mean, you'd have to look under the hood, and who's gonna look under the hood? I mean, you have GRS, gender reassignment surgery, or SRS, sexual reassignment surgery, whatever it is. So you won't be able to see that bulge. I mean, ever. It's not like if they tuck their thing under, and yeah. So let's see. Hopefully I don't get safe. I mean, a lot of these images, right? You can pretty much easily tell. I mean, especially when they're on hormone therapy for just a few months, not like full 5 years. Some you wouldn't even be able to tell, just because they would have FFS, which is facial feminization surgery. They'll have top surgery, which is their breasts, and they wear makeup, whatever. It's very difficult to tell. I mean, I could probably get people who, if I could get people who are transvestigators, I could compile a list of photos to them, and they'd have to say whether this person that I showed this photo is this person transgender or not transgender, as far as what they say that they are, right? A lot of people who post on either Reddit or Instagram or a couple other places, they like to share with people how their transition is going, just to give support to other people who are transitioning, that it takes time, it's different for everyone, etc., etc. And a lot of times it's like, wow, that's crazy, that's amazing, I never thought you know, it was that good for some people. And then yeah, so and some of the things that I think about is who's public, who's I guess what organization groups, because they're always going to have, every group, every organization is going to have some leader behind it that has that wants the organization to follow them, and if you don't, well, you're screwed. And I find hypocrisy about what they focus on. For example, Evangelical Times, they focus on the transgender agenda, and they don't focus on the problems that they already have internally within that organization. And so if they're focused on the transgender agenda, just like, say, like the evangelicals, I say, why don't you focus on the sexual abuse of children, the pedophiles that occur within the evangelical church, or the church leaders who are just embezzling so much money out of the churchgoers? Why don't you focus on that? Is that something more important than whether someone that you're not going to want to have any association with anyway, nor sex, whether they're LGBTQ plus? And of course, they're not going to focus on that because they don't want to come out of the closet on the things that are occurring within their own organization. So one of the things that gets confusing also is I'm trying to find what is the purpose behind the trans agenda. Is it it can be many things. Let's say the trans agenda is just part of the New World Order agenda of population control. They would just want men becoming females, females becoming males, and their junk no longer works, so they can no longer have kids, except they can always have kids. I mean, one of the things that occurs before you transition or you start transitioning is to save your sperm or save your eggs. That way, if you want children in the future, you can have it. So if there was an agenda, they would say, no, don't do that, right? It just makes no sense. And a lot of people, I would say a majority of people kind of transition late. It's hard because there's really no data on that. But as far as going through the forums today or this year and things like that, yeah, most people who are transitioning, they've been married, they are married, they have kids, they've had kids, and all this stuff, and they usually post a lot more about, rather than posting just pictures, which the younger generation will just post more pictures than lengthy blog articles, blogs, and stuff like that. So in that case, no, I don't see that as the case. Otherwise, they would, for example, put yourself in that situation where you're mandating a trans agenda and it's for population control. It's like you would say, well, no, once you transition, you don't want to store your sperm or your eggs anywhere. And, you would probably put that in there. So, because that's a form of population control. Let's see. And, yeah, so the other thing is, what's another purpose maybe behind the trans agenda? I've seen it as a way to discredit women, cis females, and I'm wondering, why doesn't it discredit males, like cis males? If the thing is with transgenderism, it's both sides of the spectrum. And which again goes to religion, where a lot of religious people, unless you're those weird religions where they rape women and stuff like that, and they have no rights. But a lot of religious people are very protective of females, and they go, well, uh, male transitioning to female is not a real female, so you know they'll go ahead and rape them, which is seems a little weird. Uh, seems pretty gay, and then or they'll you know just beat them up. But then you ask them, well, is a female transitioning to a male a male? They go, no, they're a female. And so, like, if would they protect them? Uh, you know, or would they beat them up? That's an interesting one, right? Because in the whole transgenderism, you know, things opposite spectrums just crosses transition. That's what trans is: transition, transitioning, transgendering, right? And I just can't see the purpose of wanting to be transgender. I think of all the things that you might want to come out as, transgenderism is being transgender is probably the least one you would want to come out for. People who are married, it's gonna most likely end in divorce. People who have jobs are gonna lose their jobs. You would probably think if they're really pushing, and they seem to be pushing hard right now, right, with the whole COVID-19 pandemic and vaccines, whatever it is, just more control. You would think that they would just already have more protections already in place, and they don't. If you look at the transgender rights for each state, you're going to see that it's just kind of all over the place. It's some places are unacceptable, I guess they would say. Some places are very good. Some places are very poor. You know, what does that mean for each of these states? For example, let's look at where I live in Nebraska. And they have all these things. So let's see. That's Kansas. Where did Nebraska go? Here we go. Yeah, they moved it. What? I don't see it. Georgia, Nebraska. Okay, maybe this is it. Very bad. At many U.S. universities, trans students have two housing options: live with the wrong gender or find your own place. But next fall, the University of Nebraska-Lincoln will start offering gender-neutral housing. They're starting small with just a couple of suites, but it's a big symbolic step. Rating very bad. City of Omaha protects its residents against employment discrimination on the basis of gender identity. That's pretty much the only place in the state you'll find such protections. So, you know, out of 100, it's got total of 13. So you can easily just lose your job. Although something did pass at the federal level that protects transgender people. States can still figure ways around it, and you know, nothing you can do about it, because all the laws that were in place in the state, it just kind of gives you a timeline, timestamp, right? A snapshot of how things are. So you know, it's not like it's like a cool thing to do. I mean, it's not like a rage. It's not like most. I guess the cool thing that you might see that people do is the whole covering one eye, the one-eyed symbolism type of thing. And I guess that's, if you want to call that a rage, even though that's been going on for decades. But it's, I mean, you could choose the spectrum, right? Choose the whole LGBTQ plus. Which one would you rather come out as? Not necessarily actually coming out, and not that you actually are, but just if you had to choose one to tell your family and say, yeah, but I was just joking. You know, you would probably not choose transgender as one that you come out as. That's actually the worst one to come out as of the entire LGBTQ plus. So I think they would have tried to make it more fashionable, but instead, again, it ends up being the entire what is that? Very a toxic thing to mention in regards to certain religions. So you get this other backlash, you know, it's just like political fighting. It seems like they're actually fighting each other, but they're working together. It seems similar to that to me. The entire trans agenda is a way to discredit transgenderism, because I don't think even the mainstream media put transgenderism in a good light, right? They say it as dysphoria, they say it could be mental illness, it could be disease, whatever mainstream media says. Even alt media, they don't really talk well of it, you know, just probably people who are just trying to find support for it, and people who actually care. It's just something that's just not going to to put a good light on transgenderism in no other light, right? When you talk about like the whole J.K. Rowling thing, right? More people will probably be supportive of J.K. Rowling than against J.K. Rowling about how, you know, people who are transgender just need conversion therapy. Not that conversion therapy ever worked for people who were gay or lesbian or bisexual or whatever in the past. It's probably not going to work for transgender people. And so she got a lot of backlash, but I'm sure she also got a lot more support. So it's just another weapon to divide people, and, you know, people that they never met, that they never know, where they already have some discrimination against them because of their religious background and stuff like that. Not anything personal type of stuff, because really, why would a black person or Asian person really, you know, try to be a part of the Ku Klux Klan or like the Nazi movement or something like that? It just seems counterintuitive. So same with someone who's very fundamental evangelical or something like that. That's where transgenders are supposedly abominations. They should be killed and all that. Well, why would any evangelical want to hang out with someone who's LGBTQ plus in the first place? So, you know, what does it matter to them in any everyday lives to really protest something like that? You know, it's like, it's not really affecting me unless they're coming out and lynching me and actually killing people and all that stuff. If that was the case, they wouldn't be out there protesting. They'd just be in prison. So it makes no sense. Just live your own life, really. And let's see, trans agenda. Maybe we could see some more here. I mean, a lot of the transgender stuff is just saying this person is transgender, or the non-PC term tranny. I don't care if you call me a tranny. It doesn't really matter, you know. Whether someone's a man, someone's a woman, whatever. Like, what does it in the end, what does it matter if they're transgender or not, right? I mean, I think people before said J.K. Rowling was transgender, and then she speaks out against transgender. So explain to me that one. So what's difficult about this is I would love to speak and talk with someone who's a transvestigator, someone who looks into transgender, the trans agenda, and get their thoughts to it. Of course, they'll never share their names, they'll never show their face, so I'll never really get a background of why does it matter to them so much about the trans agenda. What's their religion? What's their background, religious affiliation? Why do they hate the transgender agenda or transgenders in general, and a whole bunch of other stuff, which Unfortunately, they don't even say what the entire transgender agenda is. It's war on genders. Well, it's like war on terror. What does war on genders mean? What does war on terror mean? What does war on drugs mean? You know, it's just another, what is it, doublespeak? That's from 1984. It's like, why are you using doublespeak in a conspiracy theory, right? Because everyone who undergoes conspiracy theories already understands what doublespeak is, and that the mainstream control systems and stuff, they all really push doublespeak stuff. So why are you? Isn't that a big sign of some controlled opposition when they start speaking in doublespeak? So people don't pay attention, you know. War on genders right here. But you know, I think some people are paying attention. You know, put all this in a grain of salt. Let's see. Let me just look into some more. Your normal transgender agenda. Ideologies that individuals can recreate their identity and demand society's approval is not commonplace in the UK. Not very supported in the UK. In this book, Christian thinkers. Isn't that an oxymoron? I'm just kidding, you Christian people. In the fields of philosophy, sociology, theology, literature, and medicine, explain the backgrounds of this new normal and why it damages both the individuals concerned and the wider society. Interesting. I would kind of like to know what the transgender agenda is from this person before I want to read the book. Let's see. Promoting hate. That's funny. They're not interfering with your rights. Yes, that is true. However, you're interfering with theirs. Let's see. The problem with this distinct from sex, which is biological and unchangeable, it's not true, because if it was unchangeable, people wouldn't take hormone replacement therapy. And that in itself shows you that secondary sex characteristics, which is that has to do with softening of the skin, the thinning of the hair, the growth of breasts, especially for male to female, the fat redistribution, all of that is done on just a simple pill. So it is changeable. Otherwise, no one would take it. Right? Anyways, so the harm it does to people is both the young psychologically as well as physically. I would say the ones who especially the young who are harming themselves are most likely. It's hard to get any data on it, but you know, they want to be who they want to be. What really hurts anyone is when they want to be something and no one else supports them, or people don't let them be who they want to be, and therefore they see no out, and that's why they would hurt themselves or want to commit suicide. So this is actually the opposite. And it's a choice. People who undergo hormone replacement therapy, they can stop taking it. Things can be reversed, unless they actually have surgery. You know, some of that may not be reversed, especially male to female. If as far as female to male, you can have breast take the breasts out. You know, that's reversible. You could put breasts back in. So anyways, people you don't know who these people are that are saying these things, so it really doesn't matter, does it? Yeah. Let's see. Our information today. What is the transgender agenda and how should Christians respond? So let's see. What is the transgender agenda? Transgender agenda is never shows you. Never tells you what the transgender agenda is. I would like to know. It feels like it should be easily known. Like we understand as far as people who are in any type of conspiracy arena, right? What is the purpose behind 9/11 being an inside job, power grab by governments? And what is the agenda of perpetuating globe Earth, and not getting people to see the Earth as it really is? Well, that's just more control, either from the government, from scientific point, scientism, or religious. Actually, not religious, but more theological, philosophical. I mean, there's just kind of prevent you from investigating further. I mean, that's why I think the controlled opposition of Flat Earth, where all they do is just focus on the shape of the Earth, and they already knew once they figured out that the globe Earth was a lie. It's like, why do you need to make 1,000 videos of the same thing? Just move on. There's a purpose behind it, so find a purpose behind it. And what's important when you understand this, the cosmology that you investigate and everything that surrounds it, and how you can frame your perspective on how things are and how it relates to you, or if it doesn't, all of that is what matters, not necessarily just something that is a topic of conversation, right? I mean, it's like someone's birthday was yesterday. Why do we need 1,000 videos of that birthday from that person yesterday? Right? It's just that birthday happened. Let's focus on the next birthday. Let's focus on the next person's birthday. Let's do something else, right? But one problem with Flat Earthers, or Flat Earth content creators, whether they're controlled opposition or not, they don't move on from that. I would say there's just a relative few that do, and even some of that relative few, the majority of that few, continue to go back into a control system of religion, and that's pretty depressing in some ways, because you would think that they would keep going. There's more to it, but that's it. And it's fine if you have a cosmological view of the current scientific, whichever one you want to pick, with the globe model, with outer space and planets that you could go to, and like the moon and things like that. And as long as it doesn't diminish your sovereignty in many ways, right? A lot of it, if you follow that model, you're probably with the following the model of the evolutionary path, and you're just a little blip on a large blip, and you're just like a piece of dust that really doesn't matter in the big scheme of things. But that's not a good way to view yourself or anyone else or anything else. That diminishes the importance of what's going on. And let's see. It's like I would usually, if like you ask a question, what is something, they always say it is this. Or here's the Urban Dictionary, this is what it is. Here's medium.com, how you can stand up to the transgender agenda. Being a fan, I don't know who that is. Senator Amanda Stoker. Let's see. So what is standing up to the transgender agenda? What is the transgender agenda? That people are coming out as transgender because they've always been transgender. So if rather than focusing on, hey, people who are transgender are coming out as transgender, that's a problem. Maybe not, because there's no matter what. All right, so it ends up being, is being transgender a choice, right? I think if I had an argument or a debate or conversation with someone who's against transgenderism, they would probably say no, being transgender is a choice. And I think again, we go back to the previous point. If being transgender is a choice, why would anyone want to come out as transgender, especially when a lot of people who come out as transgender, harm seems to come to them, or things don't work out well for them in their careers. Things don't work out for them in their love life or their families and their friends and all of that. There's a big stigma of being transgender in almost all cultures, except for very few. So what's the benefit of coming out as transgender if transgender is a choice? And they're not going to have anything to say as being beneficial. Now, if transgenderism isn't a choice, then everyone who comes out as transgender, they've always been transgender. They just hid it, right? Just like me for 41 years. I was always transgender. I just hid it. So, my thoughts as far as for me, being transgender isn't a choice. We're born with it. Our choice is whether we want to actually transition physically to match whatever it is that we feel we are, how we see ourselves, and things like that. And a lot of the thing with society is a definition of what a woman is, definition of what a man is, changes based on time and place. So if you were a woman in the 40s, it's a lot different than someone who was a woman in the 80s, 1980s, not age 40s, or someone who is a woman in the 2020s. The same thing with being a man. Back when I was a boy, this is what it was to be a man. You hear all that like in the 60s, and then things changed. What's it like being a man in the 90s? What does it mean being a man in the 2020s? All of that changes because society and cultures and time changes a lot of things. And so if the definition of what being a woman is and a man is changes over time, well, it's pretty fluid, isn't it? All right. Let's see. Nothing on what the agenda is. Yeah, so nothing on stand up to the transgender agenda. I think the whole idea for the transgender agenda is that people are coming out as transgender and they're transitioning. That's the trans agenda, folks. That's it. The trans agenda is that people are coming out. If there are any theories of, there are people who, I guess, rich people that are supporting organizations that also help support people who transition. They probably also don't help because they also don't interfere with getting people into office to change laws that support people who transition as transgender, right? So we can have this argument back and forth. So every reason, like who benefits? The Koi Bono, right? Who benefits from having people become transgender? That's what I want to know. Who benefits? Maybe some organization does, maybe not a big one, because it's really not taking off very well. It's still people fighting tooth and claw. For example, with the whole COVID-19 pandemic, you want to get blood work done, and it's hard to get blood work done. And finding an endocrinologist or gender therapist is very difficult. All you have to do is just talk to anyone who's transgender, wants to transition. It's tough. You have to really look and find places where you get informed consent. Informed consent. Right. Places where informed consent. What that means is they pretty much give you the information. You have a meeting with a nurse practitioner or a doctor, someone who's qualified to give out prescriptions for the medication to transition, and they just tell you exactly what's going to happen, that these are the types of medicine available that you can take, how you can take it, and how much you want to start with. They usually want you to come in for a blood test, especially initial blood test, where they get a baseline of like your testosterone levels and your estrogen levels, and then you'll follow up like 3 months later, every 3 months, or after that, I don't know. Maybe it's every 3 months, just to see how the amounts are doing, what your T and E levels are, whether it's affecting your liver enzymes, whether it's affecting your potassium levels, and all this other stuff. So they usually want that. But a lot of people aren't able to even get that, and therefore they have what's called do-it-yourself, DIY. That's been a big thing, because they're able to find medicine prescriptions that they can order online from certain places, and they just go take the medication on their own, and hopefully that to them it's safe. Although everyone who's a lot of people who go through the informed consent at least say, that's not safe. But as far as the difference between do-it-yourself and people who go through informed consent, it's the same. I mean, I have a meeting with a nurse practitioner, and she told me pretty much everything I already knew from looking online and looking at all the information. Started out with the doses that I wanted to pick with, and she says okay, and I started at the lowest point, right? And then there's no blood test, initial baseline. There's going to be a next blood test in 3 months. People can have their own blood test that they do online, 3 months. Of course, doing it yourself has been pretty expensive, I think. And so, I mean, when people have to resort to doing things on their own, that means there's not a lot of support. So there's not a lot of support for people who want to transition when they're transgender. So that's usually not talked about, because everyone who's talking about the transgender or transvestigation, they're not trans. So they don't know what it's like to go through the transition process. And the costs are expensive. So if you didn't have, so as far as I know, a lot of the medication isn't covered by health insurance. There's no big push to get that going in any political circles. So you would think that if there's a transgender going, that they would actually have big pharma actually help pay for the medication, right? Not the case. They would also make sure, hey, why don't we make the surgeries a lot cheaper, so a lot more people who are transgender can go ahead and have these surgeries. It's not the case. The surgeries are expensive. Even trying to get rid of facial hair, either through laser hair therapy or electrolysis, super expensive. I can't afford it. So, you know, if they're going to have that process, there actually being an agenda for an actual objective, for some benefit, they would have all of these things in place, and they don't. It's a very Wild West thing, being transgender and wanting to transition. Let's see. I mean, there's no one really chatting. Maybe in the comments, people who watch this video, and this is pretty long. It's about an hour. It's actually a lot shorter than most of my other videos in the past. But put in the comments, what is the transgender agenda? You know, what's the main purpose behind it? And state your case, because I've been transvestigating, and sure, there are probably people in certain control systems that are in charge, probably have a reason for putting people in place that are transgender and stuff like that. But what's your thoughts behind it, the purpose behind it? Why did they make it so hard to transition? Is that all part of the plan? You know, all of that stuff. That'd be insightful. I could look into it more, and I can have a second stint at this once I get more information. I mean, this is just stuff that I want to find easily. I mean, people who are making a lot of videos of the transgender agenda and stuff like that. It's like, I have to dig deep, and the deeper I dig, the more information I get on some people. It's, again, this person, Aria Per Se, had a good one on basically what is controlled opposition. It's something that siphons your time, energy, and money, right? So looking at the transgender agenda, all I see is as something that siphons a lot of time and energy, and, well, not necessarily money, because you don't have to spend money to watch videos, but there's just so much, and all you want to do is want to find out what's the transgender agenda, what's the purpose behind it, and how have they implemented it so they're gonna make it work. There's nothing that I can find. The most I can find in actuality is a lot of history of transgenders in I guess ancient cultures, not necessarily all religions, but some religions, a lot of natives of countries, different countries, where androgyny and transgenderism and all of that stuff was actually good. People were honored. I think someone mentioned, and I read, is like the Native Americans in the United States, North America, I should say, had a specific term, and it's called, I don't want to get it wrong, Native Americans transgender. You can easily find it. Two-Spirit. There it is. You can read about Two-Spirit people of North America. I bet you've never even heard of it before, right? You could look into just a lot of early Christian and mid, I guess, the 1000s, you know, they have a lot of depictions of angels and things like that as being androgynous, or neither male or female. Even in all cultures, even in Hinduism and Buddhism, there's a lot of androgyny or transgender depictions of deities and spirits and all this other stuff. And they don't look at it as a negative thing. They've always looked at it as a positive thing. But of course, with certain religions that have been in control for the last couple of centuries, where they've, what's that term when you destroy an entire civilization and their culture? Well, they've done that and pushed a certain agenda, which we can clearly see and look at the timeline of the historical record that they give out, even that's what they did. And well, who do you trust? The current control systems that are in place, power structures, and the way that they've been doing things and their depiction of how things are? Or do you trust more the cultures that they eliminated and what they were doing, and why they would want to wipe out an entire population of a culture, civilization, and things like that? So things you have to really think about. Keep going, keep expanding. Look into the official story, look into the story that's not told, look into people who you know, people who you know their names, their face, their history, what they always talk about, how they talk about it, whether it's always been honest or dishonest, whether there's some agenda behind whatever it is. Some people are gatekeepers and they want you to sway you back into a different control system if you come out of one, or is that person trying to get you to be totally free of every and all control systems and have your thoughts, your thinking, your things to be your own, and always that way, always speaking the truth, never being hypocritical, pointing out people who are hypocritical, and all this other stuff. So it really is up to you. But you know, there are a lot of people who say the same thing, and they have something in it for themselves for some reason. Maybe it's money, maybe it's fame, maybe they're doing it for some organization, or maybe they are mind controlled, who knows. But even if someone's mind controlled, telling you to be free and not go to any control system, well, isn't that a good mind controlled person that you would want to follow, as opposed to the mind controlled person or non-mind controlled person who tells you to be a slave within the system, right? So you gotta always think about these things. Anyways, thank you for joining me and watching. Comment in the comment section, tell me what the trans agenda is. Thank you very much.